Jake Miller walked slowly around the fence that kept Forward Base Delta safe. The sun was setting on planet Kepler 442b, and the sky turned orange and purple. He had done this walk many times before. It was part of his job as a supply officer. Check the fence, look for problems. Make sure nothing dangerous was trying to get in. The planet was quiet tonight. Too quiet, Jake thought. For the past 3 weeks, there had been fighting in space above them, big ships shooting at each other with weapons that could destroy whole cities. Sometimes pieces of those ships would fall from the sky like burning stars. Jake stopped walking. He heard a sound. It was soft and sad, like crying. He looked around but saw nothing. The sound came again. This time he was sure it came from behind a pile of broken metal near the fence. He walked toward the sound. His boots made crunching noises on the dry ground. The crying got louder as he got closer. Jake pulled out his flashlight and turned it on. The bright light showed him something he had never seen before. 2 small creatures sat behind the metal pile. They were about the same size as cats, but they looked nothing like any animal Jake knew. Their skin was covered in scales that changed colors in the light. Blue, green, purple, and silver colors moved across their bodies like water. They had 6 legs each, and their eyes were big and dark. Both creatures were hurt. Jake could see cuts on their scales and dried blood on their fur. One of them had a bad cut on its front leg. The other one was so thin that Jake could see its ribs. They looked at him with their big eyes, and Jake felt his heart break a little. "Hey there, little guys," Jake said in a soft voice. "What happened? To you?" The creatures did not run away. They just looked at him and made that sad crying sound again. Jake knew he should not touch them. The rules were very clear about this. No human should touch any alien creature without permission from the science team. It was dangerous. The creatures might have diseases. They might be poisonous. They might attack. But Jake looked at the 2 small hurt animals and forgot about the rules. They were in pain. They needed help. That was all that mattered to him. Jake sat down on the ground and moved slowly toward them. "It's okay," he said. "I won't hurt you. I want to help." One of the creatures, the one with the hurt leg, tried to move away, but it was too weak. It fell over and cried louder. The other one moved closer to its friend, trying to protect it. Jake opened his medical kit. He always carried it during his walks around the fence. Inside were bandages, healing spray, and pain pills. He had used this kit to help other soldiers many times. Now he would use it to help these strange little creatures. "This might hurt a little," Jake said as he cleaned the cut on the first creature's leg. The animal made a small noise but did not try to bite him. Jake put healing spray on the cut and wrapped it with a clean bandage. "There, that should feel better soon." The second creature was very thin and weak. Jake could tell it had not eaten in many days. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his dinner. It was not much, just a protein bar and some dried fruit. But it was all he had. Jake broke the protein bar into small pieces and held one out to the thin creature. At first, it did not move. Then very slowly, it reached out with its mouth and took the food. It ate the small piece quickly and looked at Jake for more. "That's all I have right now," Jake said. "But I'll bring you more food tomorrow, I promise." He gave small pieces of food to both creatures. They ate everything he had. As they ate, their scales began to change colors again. The colors became brighter and more beautiful. Jake thought they might be feeling a little better. When the food was gone, Jake looked at the creatures more closely. In the light of his flashlight, he could see something strange. On the top of each creature's head was a small mark that looked like a crown. The marks were very faint, almost invisible. Jake thought they might be natural markings, like the spots on a dog. "You two need names," Jake said. He looked at how their scales sparkled in the light. "I'll call you Spark," he said to the first one. "And you'll be Nova," he said to the second. Spark and Nova seemed to like their names. They made a new sound, softer and happier than their crying. It sounded almost like cats purring. Jake knew he could not take the creatures back to the base. That would get him in big trouble. But he could not leave them outside with no shelter. The nights on this planet were cold. and there were wild animals. That might hurt them. Jake looked around and found some pieces of metal and plastic. He built a small shelter against the fence where Spark and Nova could stay warm and dry. He put his jacket inside to make it comfortable. "I have to go back now," Jake told them, "but I'll come back tomorrow with more food, and maybe some real medicine for your cuts." Spark and Nova curled up together in the shelter. They looked at Jake with their big eyes and made their purring sound. Jake thought they understood that he was trying to help them. As Jake walked back to the base, he felt good about what he had done. He had broken the rules, but he had helped two creatures that needed help. That seemed more important than following rules. He did not know that Spark and Nova were not just random alien animals. He did not know that the crown-like marks on their heads meant they were royalty. He did not know that somewhere in space a huge army was looking for them. Jake Miller just knew that he had found two hurt, hungry creatures and had done what he could to help them. In 19 minutes, his simple act of kindness would change everything. Jake had just walked into the base when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. Soldiers ran in all directions. Jake had never heard alarms this loud before. Something very bad was happening. "All personnel to battle stations," a voice shouted over the speakers. "This is not a drill. All personnel to battle stations now." Jake dropped his empty medical kit and ran toward the command center. He pushed through crowds of scared soldiers. Everyone was asking the same question. What was going on? Commander Lisa Parker was already in the command center when Jake arrived. She stood in front of a huge screen that showed space around their planet. Her face was white with fear. Next to her, Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez was typing fast on his computer, trying to understand what they were seeing. "Ma'am, the numbers don't make sense," Rodriguez said. His voice was shaking. "The computer says there are 7,000 ships out there. 7,000, that has to be wrong." "Run the scan again," Commander Parker ordered. Jake looked at the screen. He could see tiny dots of light at the edge of their solar system. There were so many dots that they looked like stars. But Jake knew they were not stars. They were spaceships. "Second scan complete," Rodriguez said. 7,215 ships, ma'am. They're all moving toward us. Estimated time of arrival, 6 hours. Commander Parker sat down hard in her chair. "That's impossible. Who has 7,000 ships? Even the Earth Navy only has about 3,000 ships in total." "Unknown, ma'am. The ships don't match any design in our database. They're not human ships. They're not from any alien race we know about." More soldiers crowded into the command center. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. Jake squeezed closer to the front so he could see the screen better. The dots of light were getting bigger. The ships were moving fast. "Ma'am," Rodriguez shouted, "I'm getting a transmission. They're trying to talk to us." "Put it on speaker," Commander Parker said. The room filled with a strange sound. It was like music, but not human music. It was beautiful and scary at the same time. Then the music stopped, and a voice spoke. The voice was deep and powerful. It did not sound human. At first, Jake could not understand the words. They were in a language he had never heard before. But then the computer started translating and words appeared on the screen. "Humans of the third planet. We are the Vaktar Empire. You have something that belongs to us. Return our young princes immediately, or face the wrath of our fleets." Everyone in the room looked at each other. "Princes? What princes?" The alien voice continued. "We know the princes are on your world. Our sensors have found them. Bring them to us now, or we will take them by force. You have 1 hour to comply." The transmission ended. The room was quiet, except for the sound of computers beeping and people breathing hard. "Princes," Commander Parker said. "What princes? We don't have any alien princes here." Rodriguez was typing again. "Ma'am, they sent biological data with the message. The computer is trying to match it with anything we have in our files." Jake felt something cold in his stomach. He thought about Spark and Nova. He thought about the crown-like marks on their heads. But that was crazy. They were just small animals. They could not be princes. "Got it," Rodriguez said. The biological data matches 2 life forms that were detected near the perimeter fence. The detection happened. He looked at his computer screen. 19 minutes ago. Commander Parker turned to look at all the soldiers in the room. Who was on perimeter duty tonight? Jake felt everyone looking at him. His mouth was dry. His hands were shaking. That was me, ma'am. Did you see anything unusual, Miller? Jake knew he should tell the truth. But telling the truth meant admitting he had broken the rules. It meant getting in trouble, maybe going to jail. But as he looked at the screen full of enemy ships, Jake realized that getting in trouble was not the worst thing that could happen. Yes, ma'am, I found 2 small alien creatures near the fence. They were hurt and hungry. I gave them medical aid and some food. The room exploded with angry voices. You did what? Are you crazy? That's against regulations, Commander. Parker held up her hand for quiet. Miller, describe these creatures. Jake described Spark and Nova. He told everyone about their scales, their 6 legs, their big eyes. He told them about the cuts and how thin they were. He did not mention the crown marks. He was not sure why. Rodriguez was comparing Jake's description with the alien data. It's a match, ma'am. The creatures Miller found are the ones the aliens want. Where are they now? Commander Parker asked. I built them a shelter near the fence. They're probably still there. Commander Parker walked over to Jake. She was angry, but Jake could see she was also scared. Miller, do you understand what you've done? You've started a war. There are 7,000 enemy ships up there because of you. Jake felt terrible. He had just wanted to help 2 hurt animals. He never thought it would cause something like this. I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't know they were important. They just looked like they needed help. Well, they're more than important, Commander Parker said. They're alien royalty. And their father has come to get them back with the biggest fleet anyone has ever seen. Another alarm started ringing. Rodriguez looked at his screen and his face went pale. Ma'am, the aliens are sending another message. Put it through. The alien voice spoke again. This time it sounded angrier. Humans, you have not responded to our demand. We know you have our princes. Bring us the human who touched them. We will judge this human according to our laws. You have 30 minutes to comply, or we will destroy your world. Commander Parker looked at Jake. Every soldier in the room looked at Jake. He was just a supply officer. He had never been in a real battle. He had never even fired his weapon except in training. But now the most powerful alien fleet in the galaxy wanted him. Ma'am, Jake said quietly, I'll go. This is my fault. I should face the consequences. Miller, you don't understand. They want to judge you according to their laws. We don't know what that means. They might kill you. Jake thought about Spark and Nova. He thought about how scared they had been, how hungry they were, how they had trusted him enough to take food from his hand. Ma'am, I couldn't let them suffer. I had to help them. If that means I have to face their father, then I'll do it. Commander Parker stared at Jake for a long time. Outside, more alarms were ringing. Soldiers were preparing for a battle they could never win. 7,000 alien ships were getting closer to their planet. Rodriguez, send a message to the aliens, Commander Parker finally said. Tell them we will bring them the human they want, but they have to promise not to hurt anyone else. Yes, ma'am. Jake looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere up there, Spark and Nova's father was waiting for him. Jake had no idea what would happen when they met. But he knew one thing for sure. He would do the same thing again if he had the chance. Helping those 2 creatures had been the right thing to do, even if it meant facing the consequences. 2 hours later, Jake stood on the landing pad with 6 soldiers pointing guns at him. He was not their prisoner, but he was not free either. Commander Parker had decided that Jake needed guards in case he tried to run away. But Jake had no plans to run. He had caused this problem and he would face it. The alien ship was coming down from the sky. It was beautiful and scary at the same time. The ship was silver and gold, and it moved without making any sound. It was much bigger than any human ship Jake had ever seen. Strange symbols glowed along its sides. Remember, Miller, Commander Parker said. She stood next to him, also watching the ship land. Be respectful. Don't make them angry. The lives of everyone on this planet depend on how this meeting goes. Jake nodded. His mouth was dry and his hands were shaking, but he tried to look brave. Around the landing pad, 50 human soldiers were hiding behind barriers. They had big guns and rocket launchers, but Jake knew it would not matter. If the aliens wanted to destroy the base, they could do it easily. The alien ship landed with a soft thump. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a door opened in the side of the ship. Bright white light poured out. The first alien to come out was huge. It was almost 8 feet tall and covered in scales like Spark and Nova, but these scales were dark purple and gold. It carried a weapon that hummed with energy. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness. More aliens came out behind the first one. They were all big and dangerous looking. They wore armor that sparkled in the light and carried weapons that Jake had never seen before. They moved like soldiers who had won many battles. But then another alien came out, and Jake forgot about all the others. This alien was even bigger than the rest. It wore long robes that seemed to be made of starlight. The robes moved and changed colors like water. On its head was a crown made of metal and jewels that hurt to look at. Its eyes were not red like the others, they were silver and seemed to see everything. "That's the Emperor," Commander Parker whispered. "Emperor Zarthok of the Vaktar Empire." Jake had heard stories about Emperor Zarthok. He was said to be the most powerful being in the galaxy. His empire controlled 1,000 worlds. His armies had never lost a battle. Kings and presidents from other planets came to bow before him. And now Jake, a simple supply officer from a small human base, was going to meet him. The Emperor walked across the landing pad toward them. His guards spread out around him, ready to fight. The Emperor's silver eyes looked at the human soldiers behind their barriers. He looked at Commander Parker in her dress uniform. Then he looked at Jake. Jake had never felt so small in his life. The Emperor was not just big in body. He felt big in spirit too. Jake could feel power rolling off him like heat from a fire. This was someone who ruled star systems and commanded millions of soldiers. Commander Parker stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I am Commander Lisa Parker of the Human Colonial Forces. We have brought the person you requested." The Emperor did not look at her. He kept staring at Jake with his silver eyes. When he spoke, his voice was deep and made the ground shake. "You are the human who dared to touch royal blood?" Jake's voice came out as a whisper. "Yes, sir. Your Majesty. I am. You touched my sons without permission. You fed them like common animals. You treated princes of the Vaktar Empire like pets." The Emperor's voice got louder and angrier with each word. "Do you know the penalty for such disrespect?" Jake tried to speak, but no words came out. He was too scared. The Emperor stepped closer. Now Jake could smell his breath, which was like burning metal. "In our empire, touching royalty without permission means death. Treating princes like animals means death. Feeding them common food means death." Jake found his voice. "I didn't know they were princes, Your Majesty. I just saw 2 hurt, hungry animals. I wanted to help them." "Ignorance is not an excuse," the Emperor roared. "You humans think you can do whatever you want. You think your pathetic emotions make you special. But strength is what matters. Power is what matters. And you have insulted the most powerful family in the galaxy." The Emperor's guards raised their weapons. The human soldiers behind their barriers aimed their guns at the aliens. For a moment it looked like a battle would start right there on the landing pad. But then Jake heard a familiar sound. It was soft and happy. It was purring. 2 small shapes came running across the landing pad. Spark and Nova had escaped from their shelter. They ran past all the soldiers, both human and alien. They ran past the guards with their big weapons. They ran straight to Jake. Spark jumped up Jake's leg and climbed onto his shoulder. Nova did the same thing on the other side. Both creatures nuzzled against Jake's face and purred loudly. The Emperor stopped yelling. His guards stopped pointing their weapons. Everyone on the landing pad stared in shock. The 2 little princes who should have been running to their father were cuddling with a human. They were showing more affection to Jake than they had ever shown to anyone else. Spark? Nova? Jake whispered, "You shouldn't be here, it's dangerous." But the two creatures just purred louder. Spark licked Jake's cheek with a small, rough tongue. Nova rubbed his head against Jake's neck. The Emperor's silver eyes got very wide. In his language, he said something that sounded like a question. The small creatures answered him in their own language, which was like musical chirping. Spark and Nova began telling their father about Jake. Jake could not understand their words, but he could tell they were excited. They kept pointing at him, with their small paws. They kept making happy sounds. The Emperor listened to his sons. As he listened, his angry expression slowly changed. He looked confused. Then he looked surprised. Then he looked like someone had just told him that the sky was green instead of blue. "They say you were kind to them," the Emperor said slowly. "They say you gave them food even though you were hungry too. They say you built them a warm place to sleep. They say you touched them gently, like they were precious." "That's right," Jake said. "They needed help." "But why?" the Emperor asked. "They were weak. They were injured. In my empire, the weak are left to die. It makes the strong stronger." Jake looked at the Emperor. He looked at all the alien guards with their weapons. He looked at Spark and Nova, who were still purring on his shoulders. "Because everyone deserves help when they need it," Jake said. "It doesn't matter if they're strong or weak, important or not important. If someone is hurt and hungry, and you can help them, then you should help them. That's what makes us human." The Emperor stared at Jake for a long time. Around them, soldiers from both sides waited to see what would happen next. Emperor Zarthok had never been so confused in his life. For 300 years he had ruled the Vaktar Empire. He had conquered worlds and destroyed armies. He understood power. He understood fear. He understood strength and weakness. But he did not understand this human. Spark and Nova were still sitting on Jake's shoulders, purring and happy. The Emperor's own sons, who barely spoke to him at home, were acting like this human was their best friend. It made no sense. "You say everyone deserves help," the Emperor said slowly. "Even the weak?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Even those who cannot help you in return?" "Yes." "Even strangers you have never met before?" Jake nodded. "Yes. That's what being human means to me." The Emperor looked at his guards. They looked as confused as he felt. In Vaktar culture, you only helped someone if they could help you back. You only showed kindness if you expected to get something from it. The idea of helping strangers for no reward was completely foreign to them. "Tell me exactly what happened," the Emperor demanded. "Every detail." Jake told the story again. He explained how he found Spark and Nova, hurt and hungry. He described cleaning their wounds and sharing his food. He talked about building them a shelter and promising to bring more food tomorrow. As Jake spoke, Spark and Nova added their own comments in their musical language. They seemed to be agreeing with everything Jake said. "They were scared at first," Jake continued. "But after I helped them, they trusted me. They were just two scared, hurt little creatures who needed someone to care about them." The Emperor's silver eyes narrowed. "You keep calling them creatures. They are princes of the mightiest empire in the galaxy." "I didn't know that then," Jake said. "And honestly, it wouldn't have mattered. They needed help. That's all I cared about." "It would not have mattered?" The Emperor's voice rose. "You would have helped them the same way even if you knew they were royalty?" "Of course. Actually, I might have been too nervous to help if I knew they were princes. I probably would have called my commander and followed the rules instead of just doing what felt right." This answer made the Emperor even more confused. "You would have been less likely to help them if you knew they were important?" Jake thought about this question. "Well, yes, I mean, helping important people is scary because you might do something wrong, but helping someone who's just hurt and alone, that's easy. You just do what your heart tells you to do." Emperor Zarthok turned to speak with his guards in their own language. Jake could not understand the words, but he could tell they were having an argument. The guards kept shaking their heads and pointing at Jake. Finally, the Emperor turned back to Jake. My advisors think you are lying. They say no one would help strangers without expecting a reward. They say you must have known who my sons were. They say you helped them because you wanted something from me. I'm not lying, Jake said quietly. I helped them because they needed help. That's the only reason. Spark chirped something to his father. Nova added his own musical words. They sounded excited and happy. My sons say you gave them your own food even though it meant you would be hungry, the Emperor said. They say you used your own jacket to make their shelter warm. They say you spoke to them gently and never raised your voice even when they were afraid. That's right. But why would you make yourself hungry to feed strangers? Why would you give up your warm jacket for creatures you had just met? Jake looked down at Spark and Nova. They looked back at him with their big, trusting eyes. Because that's what you do when someone needs help, Jake said. You help them, even if it costs you something. My grandfather taught me that. He said the measure of a person is not what they do when it's easy, but what they do when it's hard. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Your grandfather was a warrior? No, Your Majesty. He was a farmer. He grew food for other people. A farmer? The Emperor looked disgusted. A peasant? He was a good man, Jake said firmly. He taught me that helping others is the most important thing you can do with your life. The Emperor began pacing back and forth on the landing pad. His robes flowed behind him like liquid light. His guards watched him nervously. Commander Parker and the human soldiers watched too, afraid to move. In my empire, the Emperor said, strength is everything. The strong rule. The weak serve. The weak who cannot serve are left to die. This makes our species stronger. Does it? Jake asked. Does it make you happier? The Emperor stopped pacing. Happier? Yes. Are your people happy? Do they smile? Do they laugh? Do they help each other? Happiness is weakness, the Emperor said, but he did not sound sure. Jake looked at Spark and Nova. They seem happy now, they're smiling, they're purring, they're showing affection. Are you telling me that's weakness? The Emperor looked at his sons. It was true. He had never seen them this happy before. At home on the royal planet, they were always quiet and serious. They followed the rules. They acted like proper Vaktar princes, but they never smiled. They never purred. They never showed affection to anyone. They are just children, the Emperor said. They have not learned proper behavior yet. Maybe proper behavior is the problem, Jake said softly. This comment made the Emperor angry again. You dare criticize our culture? You dare judge the Vaktar Empire? I'm not judging anyone, Jake said. I'm just saying that maybe there are different ways to be strong. Maybe helping others makes you stronger, not weaker. Maybe caring about people is not a weakness, but a strength. The Emperor looked around the landing pad. He saw his own guards standing stiff and emotionless. He saw the human soldiers, who looked scared but also determined to protect their friends. He saw Commander Parker, who had put herself between Jake and danger. You humans protect each other, the Emperor observed. Yes, we try to. Even when it puts you in danger? Especially then. The Emperor thought about this. In his empire, everyone looked out only for themselves. Soldiers followed orders because they were afraid of punishment, not because they cared about each other. Leaders ruled through fear, not through love or respect. But these humans were different. They were weaker than the Vaktar in many ways. They had smaller bodies, shorter lives, less advanced technology. Yet they had traveled across the galaxy to explore and build new homes. They worked together. They helped each other. They seemed to find strength in their connections to one another. You have given me much to think about, the Emperor said slowly. He walked over to Jake and looked down at him. Even with Spark and Nova on his shoulders, Jake was much smaller than the alien ruler. Tell me, Jake Miller of the humans, the Emperor said. If I asked you to come with me to my homeworld, would you come? Jake's eyes went wide. Your homeworld? Yes. To teach my people about this kindness you speak of. to show them how you helped my sons." Jake looked at Commander Parker. She shook her head slightly, telling him it was too dangerous. But then Jake looked at Spark and Nova. They were looking at him hopefully. "Would I be able to help more people like I helped them?" Jake asked. "Perhaps." Jake took a deep breath. "Then yes, Your Majesty. I'll come with you." Emperor Zarthok stood very still for a long time. Everyone on the landing pad waited to see what he would do. The alien guards gripped their weapons tighter. The human soldiers held their breath. Commander Parker looked ready to jump in front of Jake if the Emperor attacked, but then something amazing happened. The Emperor began to remove his robes. The beautiful flowing robes that seemed to be made of starlight came off layer by layer. Underneath, the Emperor wore simple clothes, but even those sparkled with jewels and precious metals. The guards made shocked sounds in their own language. They had never seen their Emperor remove the ceremonial robes in front of strangers. "Your Majesty," one of the guards said in English. "What are you doing?" The Emperor did not answer. He finished removing the outer robes and held them in his massive hands. Then he walked over to Jake. "Jake Miller," the Emperor said in his deep voice. "You have shown virtue that I did not know existed. You have taught me something about strength that I had never learned. In my culture, we have a tradition for such moments." The Emperor placed the beautiful robes on Jake's shoulders. They were heavy and warm, and they seemed to glow with their own light. Jake could feel power in the fabric like electricity running through his body. "These are the robes of honor," the Emperor explained. "They have been passed down through my family for 1,000 years. Only someone who has shown virtue greater than the giver can wear them." Jake tried to take the robes off. "Your Majesty, I can't accept these. They're too valuable. I just did what anyone would do." "No," the Emperor said firmly. "That is exactly why you must wear them. You think what you did was normal. You think any person would help two hurt, hungry creatures, but that is not true. In my empire, no one would have helped them. In most of the galaxy, no one would have helped them. Only you did." The Emperor stepped back and looked at Jake wearing the robes. Even though Jake was much smaller than the Emperor, the robes seemed to fit him perfectly. They changed size and shape to match his body. "By the ancient laws of the Vaktar Empire," the Emperor announced in a loud voice, "I name Jake Miller as Friend of the Empire. This title has not been given in over 1,000 years. It means that all Vaktar ships, all Vaktar worlds, and all Vaktar people must treat him as they would treat me." The alien guards dropped to one knee. In space above them, 7,000 ships fired their weapons into empty space in a ceremonial salute. The sound was like thunder rolling across the sky. Commander Parker stared with her mouth open. "Your Majesty, this is incredible. We never imagined." "Commander Parker," the Emperor said, "your people have something we Vaktar have lost. You have compassion. You help the weak instead of abandoning them. You work together instead of fighting each other. I want to learn from you." The Emperor turned to his guards and spoke in his own language. Jake could not understand the words, but the guards looked surprised and excited. "I have given orders," the Emperor explained. "Half of my fleet will return home to begin changes in our empire. We will start teaching our children about kindness and helping others. We will stop abandoning the weak. We will try to be more like humans." Jake could not believe what he was hearing. "Your Majesty, you don't have to change your whole empire because of me." "Yes, I do," the Emperor said. "My sons have shown me the truth. They are happier with you than they have ever been with me. They learned more about joy in one night with a human than in years with their own people. That tells me we have been doing something wrong." Spark and Nova, still sitting on Jake's shoulders, purred loudly. They seemed to understand what their father was saying. "But the other half of my fleet will stay here," the Emperor continued. "We want to set up trade agreements with your people. We want to exchange knowledge. We want our young people to learn from your young people." Commander Parker looked like she might faint. Trade agreements with the Vaktar Empire? This would change everything for humanity. "And we want Jake Miller to come with us to our homeworld," the Emperor said, "as our first teacher of human ways. My sons refuse to return home unless he comes with them." Jake looked at Spark and Nova. Is that true? You want me to come with you? Both creatures chirped happily and nuzzled against his face. I'll need time to think about it, Jake said. Of course. But know this. If you come with us, you will not be a prisoner or a servant. You will be honored above all others except my family. You will have your own palace, your own servants, anything you desire. I don't want a palace or servants, Jake said. I just want to help people. And that, the Emperor said with something that might have been a smile, is exactly why you deserve them. 3 months later, Jake stood on the balcony of his new home on the Vaktar homeworld. It was not a palace. He had refused that, but it was a nice house with a garden where Spark and Nova liked to play. From his balcony, Jake could see the city below. It was different now than when he had first arrived. The Vaktar people were learning to smile. They were learning to help each other. Children who would have been abandoned before were now being cared for in new schools that Jake had helped design. It was not easy. Changing a whole culture never was. Some Vaktar still believed that strength came from cruelty. Some still thought kindness was weakness. But more and more of them were starting to understand what Jake had tried to teach them. Jake heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Emperor Zarthok walking onto the balcony. The Emperor looked different these days, too. He smiled more. He spent more time with his sons. He had even learned to play games with them. The Council of Worlds wants to meet you, the Emperor said. They want to learn about human ways of peace and cooperation. Jake sighed. More meetings? I'm just a supply officer from a small base. I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy. You know the most important thing, the Emperor said. You know how to see someone who needs help and actually help them. That is rarer and more valuable than all the political knowledge in the galaxy. Spark and Nova came running up to the balcony. They were bigger now, almost the size of large dogs. But they still liked to climb on Jake and purr. They still followed him everywhere he went. Besides, the Emperor added, you will not be going to these meetings alone. Spark and Nova have insisted on being your ambassadors. They want to tell other worlds how a human taught them about kindness. Jake laughed and petted both young princes. I never imagined that sharing my dinner with 2 stray animals would lead to all this. That is what makes you special, the Emperor said. You never imagined it because you were not trying to change the galaxy. You were just trying to help 2 creatures who needed help. And sometimes that is exactly what the galaxy needs most. As the sun set over the alien city, Jake thought about his grandfather's words. The measure of a person is not what they do when it's easy, but what they do when it's hard. Helping Spark and Nova had seemed like the easy thing to do at the time. But maybe easy and hard were not the right words. Maybe the right words were right and wrong. And helping someone who needed help would always be right, no matter how hard it was or what consequences it brought. Jake Miller had fed 2 alien strays and accidentally changed the galaxy. But he would do it again in a heartbeat because that was what it meant to be human.